to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Future board meetings, May 25th, June 8th, and July 13th. All of those will be here at the regular time of 6 p.m. Didn't see any revisions to the agenda, so we'll just go right into public recognition. Recommendation to approve a $750 donation from First Farmers Bank and Trust for staff appreciation meal provided by Pizza King. That happened last week. Recommendation to approve $400 donation, $300 from Hoosier Chiropractic and $100 from Don Hess for Northfield Baseball. Recommendation to approve the anonymous donation of enrollment in the Casey's Reward Program for Southwood Elementary. Recommendation to approve $200 donation from Dairyland Seed for Southwood FFA. Recommendation to approve the donation of office chairs to Metro North Elementary from Bachelor Creek Church of Christ. A recommendation to approve $630 donation made in memory of Mrs. Julia Kiefaber to the Little North Preschool at Metro North Elementary. And a recommendation to approve the $19 donation from General Mills Box Top for Education for Southwood Elementary.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion and second to approve the donations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. School recognition, Mr. Boone, I guess you're up first.
Yeah. I know I was the only one. I just spiced it up a little bit. But, no, thanks for letting us come and talk about what's going on at Southwood Elementary School. You mentioned the Pizza King donation, and last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, Staff Appreciation Week. Very much appreciate that. Also had lunch provided by Norman and Bunch Orthodontics, and Andrew Dixon brought bagels for breakfast one morning, and so I just appreciate our community partners recognizing the hard work and just showing some appreciation for our staff throughout the week last week. So thank you for that. A couple of things that I put on the spreadsheet for this week. First being, I want to thank our local Kiwanis organization. And I believe that there is a little bit of friendly competition amongst a couple of members of civic organizations in the room. So I won't, Kiwanis is a noble group, and I'm sure that the others are too. But the Kiwanis did make a donation. They've done this for the last few years to our 5th grade students or 5th grade readers who, and so they, every winter, late winter, we get a letter from Howard Halderman, and he is overseeing this, and 5th grade is allowed to select a novel, and every student went home with a copy of the novel. This year they voted on a few options, and they chose Pax, P-A-X, which is about a fox that gets adopted by a little guy that was found in the woods. I haven't read the whole story, but actually we just brought 4-H pigs home yesterday, and there is a pig named Pax in the barn, so it's obviously an impressionable story. So thank the Kiwanis for that. And then I wasn't sure what else I could say tonight, so I asked the teachers to give me some material, and actually I've got some tangible material. Mrs. Jane Kendall teaches 6th grade language arts, does all of the reading, and then has a section of writing that she does. But the book report assignment for the 4th 9 weeks, once they completed that, all of the students turned their book report into a t-shirt. And so this one was done by Jelena. bush tree. And so like they took, everything that they've been learning, throughout the year, theme and just all story elements, and incorporated that on their book report t-shirt. Summary on the back, and they illustrated each one. So I picked out a gal and a guy. Cameron did this one, and this one is called Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie. So the title in and of itself, I might check that one out and see what that's about. So, no, just, and I know, all throughout the year, just some cool things going on. Was in Mr. Denny's class the other day, and they're talking about forces and different things, and so they're going to be shooting off some rockets and racing some boats that they make, and so just a lot of neat things, which it's cool this time of year. One thing that's also happening at Southwood Elementary is some test fatigue. Our third graders did IRE right there before spring break, and then the iLearn window, it's a month-long window, and it ends this Friday. And you think, oh, a month, we've got all kinds of time. But, just the tests that you have to take. And then, of course, this year, we had some kids that were in quarantine during the tests. And so just keeping track of who needs to still take what. We're, Mr. Greg, no offense, but we're ready to be doing testing. So, but that's what I have for Southwood Elementary tonight.
All right, well, thank you very much. I know that you need to take off, so you're welcome to go, and thank you for sharing those things. So have a couple of others. Southwood, yeah.
Thank you.
Don't let the fox get in. So the Southwood High School community would like to recognize Mr. Hickman and Mrs. Kiefer for the outstanding performances from band and choir students this last week. The junior high band and choirs performed on Tuesday, and the high school band and choirs performed Thursday. Teachers were able to navigate students coming and going due to quarantine issues and still delivered an outstanding performance. I was able to go to the high school performance, and particularly Mrs. Kiefer, that was her last concert because, of course, you know that you accepted her retirement. This is her second retirement. There was some talk that, they would love to have her back, but I think she would love to retire, but you just never know what happens with who applies for the position, and maybe they can talk her back into it because a lot of kids were trying to. So we'll see what happens there. And then also, according to the May 10th regular season poll produced by the Indiana High School Baseball Coaches Association, Southwood is ranked number 1 in 1A baseball. They are currently holding a 13-2 record. Way to go, Knights. And that was from Mr. McDaniel. And then Mrs. Moore at Metro North would like to graciously thank Bachelor Creek Church of Christ, Doctors Gorman and Bunch, and MSDWC for honoring, celebrating, and appreciating our staff last week. And I'll probably say some more about that later too. But a lot of things did happen. And of course, Mr. Boone shared that tonight also. That's all I have at this time.
Okay. Public comment, agenda items only. Do you have a 10-second delay? Okay. Moving on to, if somebody does say something, since I went fast, interrupt me. Consent agenda items, approval of the minutes from our last meeting on April 27th. Need a motion for that.
I move to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes of our last meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Financials, claims. Looked kind of light this time, didn't it?
Last time we covered a couple weeks because we didn't have the one board meeting for spring break.
Do you have a motion to approve those?
Kevin's got it. I second.
Okay. Motion and second to approve claims. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to payroll.
difference in payroll there. Kind of on a low end, really, just comparative. Just looking ahead, some of the next payrolls may be a little bit bigger as we end the spring seasons with coaching and the end of the year stuff with things like department chairs and yearbook and all that type of stuff. Plus some additional stipends that we'll talk about here later. So those could be a little bit bigger.
I move the payroll.
Second. Motion second to approve payroll. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Financial summary.
Really not much to go over here since we talked a lot about it at the last board meeting because we covered it for the month of April, or month of March. This represents the end of April. And so education fund balance went up about $100,000, so it sits at 6.5 million. But nothing else to really discuss. We'll start to see those federal fund dollars. Again, those are reimbursable, but start to see new fund accounts being spent out of as we get those ESSER dollars in.
I move to approve.
Yeah, we don't need to approve.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's all right. You're right.
We do approve of it, though. Why second it?
The other thing there, and again, we don't have to go over this, but I always share it with you guys, and it's good for the new board members to see. I lay out our budget calendar timeline as we prepare. I know it's only May, but soon I'll start working on our 2022 budget. And it just kind of lays out and maps out the timeline because there are things, requirements and deadlines that we have to meet for submission. And so it just kind of lays those all out so that we meet all of those statutory deadlines when it comes to submitting our budget for next school year. So start working on some of that stuff here and there, and it really starts to pick up over the summer. But that just kind of lays it out. We're looking to do our budget hearing and adoption probably around September, which is typical, but allow for some flexibility if that needs to get pushed back down the road. We can still meet our timelines.
All right, moving on to HR. Under, I'll just read it from up there since I can't get mine. There we go. Under employment, Catherine Singleton, paraprofessional at Southwood High School, effective beginning next fall. Stacy James, special ed teacher at Southwood Elementary, beginning next fall. Under resignation, we have Jack Gibbons, an educational diagnostician at WMAP, and Nick Perlick, technology assistant at White's, and those are both effective at the end of the school year. Number 124, employee number 124, leave, beginning, you see the 8 weeks there towards the end of June.
Move the human resources report.
Second.
Motion and second to approve human resources. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So then, moving on to, it's right here. Heartland Career Center report, Matt.
None tonight.
Okay. Chief Favor, Superintendent's report.
I've just got about 2 or 3 little short ones of it. Starting with Indiana School Boards Association obviously tracks all of, this is just good data to know, but they track all of the bills in this last legislative session, which was the long session, which was budget. They were tracking 179 bills out of 1,025, interesting to know. And of those K through 12 education bills, the list that became law were 41. And then overall, there were 219 new laws that were enacted by the Indiana General Assembly. So 19% of the new laws are relevant to public education. So if anybody keeps track over the last 4 sessions, that's 148 new laws for our schools. So just interesting to note, our little, some of you can see it from here, but our education Indiana code book, I don't know, we'll need to get heavier shelves or something to hold all that all the time. So anyway, interesting to note. So yeah, it's just interesting. Also, just want to, again, everybody's done this, but also just thank all the partners that have helped us with the staff appreciation. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, and we include all staff, including, of course, you already took care of accepting the donation from First Farmers. That was a total of 75 pizzas that were delivered to the schools. And so we appreciate Pizza King for also helping with that. Bachelor Creek, of course, that was mentioned too. They allowed people to go to, where do they allow them to go to? Modoc's on Friday to pick up something to drink. So we appreciate that. And you've seen all the other things that happened. It's interesting to note another person called like on Wednesday of Teacher Appreciation Week and asked if there's something that they could do for everybody. And I said, well, why don't we do it a different week? Because there's so many things going on with donuts and pizza and all those different things. So it's great to have the community involved and supporting our schools. Also, just want to recognize Laura Lange Bartles putting that new website together. She got some help from a lot of different people, but organize it, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. It looks great. It'll be obviously a work in progress, but it's really good, and a lot of time spent on that. And then finally, our own Todd Daisy was a part of this, but Wabash Area Community Theater gave us a little thank you. Wabash Area Community Theater Board of Directors, the cast of Play On, and all of the patrons would like to thank you for your generosity to letting us use the Northwood Auditorium. The facility is first class, and the ventilation made all of us feel very comfortable. We thanked you each night, but wanted to put it in writing as well. The show was a huge hit, and appreciate the role you played in our success. Thank you again for your faith and trust in Wabash Area Community Theater. We appreciate your support, which was signed by the whole cast, including Todd Daisy. So thank you very much for that. So I was not able to go, but I did hear it was really good, and know a lot of people that have gone. So you have anything you want to say about that? Did you have fun?
Yeah, we did, and I was impressed. I had never actually been on stage at Northfield before, other than direct a band at a student teaching experience, but that was
a couple of years ago.
But to see, and it's changed, and there's been a lot of stuff backstage that I was impressed, and yeah, thank you.
Cool. That's all I have then.
Okay, curriculum report. Let's hear about that testing fatigue.
Yeah. The good news is that's all right. I did want to make the board aware that we received information from the Department of Education that they actually reduced our Title I Basic and our Title I D grants. And so Laura and Bear and Cheryl and Chris and Cheryl, like all of us had to come back together and redo all that financials. And so we're able to cover those costs, but the new board members might be good to learn that even though we were promised these funds last summer, we've already spent the funds in a grant that was approved. They still came back and reduced the funds. And so even money we're promised doesn't always hold true. And so, so we were able to make the covers. It was a significant amount, but it was still a lot of work. And so hats off to everybody that covered all that stuff.
And so it's not necessarily the money too, but all the time you just heard of everybody that was involved with that, and just to do it, and it is frustrating. And I don't know why it happens like that, but it does. So.
There's no rationale why they cut it back, or?
Not on this particular grant, but we usually hear things like they miscalculated. One year they had to include voucher schools, and they didn't include voucher schools in the original formula. We're at the 10-year cycle or 5-year cycle of paying all that back. I didn't hear this particular one, but it's every time there's some new reason.
And it's not necessarily always the state of Indiana, because it is a federal grant, so they're probably just getting it, they're just the middleman and has to, yeah. they have to let everybody know and be the spokesperson for the bad news, but.
But I was told I needed to end early because Northfield is looking for a presenter tonight for their awards. And so I'll defer my time so we can make sure we get Scott there.
All right. Under new business, we need to have an appropriation hearing. An appropriation hearing is so that we can actually get permission to spend the money. Already said we're going to, but we actually, we talked about where it's gonna go, but we haven't actually given ourselves permission to do that. So under Indiana code, I actually have to open this meeting as an open appropriation hearing meeting, and it is now open to the public. And it is now closed.
Nobody's there.
Well, you're not here, so. So at this point, we have on the board, you see in the page it's up there, you probably saw it in the packet, a resolution exhibit A to appropriate the funds that we said that we're going to use last time for the projects that are going to be that the bonds are going to be used for.
Yeah, I mean, you explained it pretty well. It's just, we just have to have appropriations to allow us to spend the money that we get from the bond sale on those projects that we discussed from the bond hearing. And that's all that resolution does, is allow us to appropriate that $2 million.
I move to the resolution. Second.
Motion and second to approve the additional appropriation resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The next thing is Exhibit B, a final bond resolution. And I'll let Chris, I won't steal this.
No, that's fine. It's laid out in explanation to you. Really, it establishes the amount to be borrowed, the maximum terms of the repayment, the maximum interest rate, things that we've already discussed. It also contains the details about the bonds. It includes a resolution that ratifies the publication of the notice of sale of the bonds and establishes the maximum cost an underwriter or bank may bid for the bonds. It establishes a bid committee who will award the bonds to the lowest bidder. That bid committee is Mike and myself and Jim Elizondo from Stiefel. And then it also includes the form of the second supplement to master continuing disclosure undertaking and the registrar and paying agent agreement, which basically, because of the Securities and Exchange Commission, they require school corporations to enter into a continuing disclosure undertaking as part of the bond issuance, which means I have to report financial information quarterly in regards to the bond per this continuing disclosure undertaking, as well as requires us to annually share financial information to the SEC's EMA database, which Ice Miller, who is part of our legal counsel for our bonds, helps us with that process.
You guys want that restated?
Doing a good job.
So that resolution was several pages, but that explains what is included in the resolution.
I move to resolution of Exhibit B.
Second that.
Motion and second to approve the final bond resolution as outlined in Exhibit B. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Recommendation to approve the commercial roofing for the high school roofing project.
Yes, so we had our bids come in, I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, I think it was May 4th, was when the bids were due. We had 3 individual companies bid for that. Wolf Commercial Roofing Incorporated was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. They're the ones that actually did our roof project this summer at the high schools, so they are familiar with our roofs. And so our recommendation is that we would go with Wolf Commercial Roofing at a bid of $884,550. And I think when we looked at what we thought the estimated cost of that would be, it was around $925,000 with that, so slightly under what we anticipated. And we were glad that a couple of those bids were open first, besides that one that was like $1.2 million. So
So that's for both schools.
that is the total cost.
And it's understood Steve got along well with these guys.
Yeah. So once they are approved, hopefully, then we can set up our meetings to get things scheduled. They don't know exactly when they'll be able to start, hopefully in July, but that may get pushed back a little bit depending on materials and so forth on their end. But again, the deadline for that is to be completed before the end of 2021.
That's what was getting to them as a requirement.
Yes.
Hopefully before it gets cold.
Yep.
I'll move to approve the recommendation for the bid.
Second.
Motion and second to approve Wolf Commercial to do the high school roofing project. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Recommendation to approve payment of pandemic stipends and positions out of the ESSER grants.
So we are in the midst of looking at ESSER 2 right now, and then there'll be ESSER 3 that, and actually Mr. Drake gets to write all those grants. And they actually show us what we can receive, and then we have to actually put in permission, actually write the grants and actually have those approved. And so the pandemic stipend that we've already discussed would be $1,000 for all of the employees. And then positions, we're still working on those, but a couple of social workers, a dean of students, paraprofessionals at the buildings. And if you recall, because I always have to look it up too, elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund are those ESSER dollars that we're receiving. And so we have to have that approved through the state, but also we have to have board approval. And so I am recommending that you approve the payment of those pandemic stipends and the positions out of those funds. And I will say though, we may bring some other things to you because we also have ESSER $3 that we haven't even had the grant given to us yet. We know what's anticipated of what the monies that we will receive, but we don't necessarily have anything to be able to write the grant yet, correct, Mr. Drake?
That's right.
So that's the recommendation.
So, yes, sir.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the payment of the pandemic stipends and creation of the positions out of the ESSER grant money. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Recommendation to approve a memorandum of understanding with the MSD of Wabash County Teacher Association.
So that's another one interesting. So since these monies are available, that can be bargainable, and we're not in the negotiating season right now. That really doesn't start officially until the mid-September. Basically we just work with the education, that's what the MSDWC Education Association, that's what all those letters stands for. So I'm just recommending that this is a very simplified MOU, but it's basically just states that those stipends will be paid to the teachers that were here during the school year and finish the school year. So it's all there on the board. Any questions? Just a 1-year deal.
I move to approve the
MOU?
site,
Yeah, it's a MOU.
MOU.
Motion and second to approve the memorandum of understanding to actually pay the teachers, ESSER grant money. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Recommendation to approve the 2021-2022 grade configurations at Metro North Elementary to be pre-K through 2 and Sharp Creek Elementary 3 through 6th grade.
This is interesting to know. We've already discussed this a lot, and basically the state also has to, if we have a change in our configurations of our schools, we have to basically not really apply, but just make note of that. But when I started doing that and filling out the JOT form, it was called, they said you also have to have school board approval, even though we've talked about it and had all that, but didn't really know that. I think we talked about that 5 years ago, that it could just be done by, but it has to be approved by the board. So it's interesting to know we haven't had any changes, so, but this is a change and it has to be approved by you as the governing body for me to continue that JOT form, and I have to forward the minutes of this meeting to them to have that changed. So that is the recommendation. We've already talked about it a lot, so
They
that's why.
define reconfiguring as moving a grade, changing grades within a building.
Yes.
Because they already identify that building as these grade levels.
Yeah.
And so that affects our title grants, and we get certain amounts for different grades, and so that has other ripple effects.
Even if you change names too, that has to be, there's a lot of different categories that we haven't ever investigated. And like I said, I didn't even know that until I filled out the JOT form, and I actually gave them the letter that we sent to all the families, but they said that's only for the charter schools, because they don't necessarily have a board, so the board has to approve that. So you learn something every day.
You mentioned the grants, like Title I, how's that gonna change?
So we have to spend certain percentages based on the percentage and the number of free and reduced students in a building. And so by adding a building to Sharp Creek now, we'll be obligated to spend a larger percentage of our Title I funds there. And since we're removing a grade from Metro North, we'll be required to spend less money there. And so it's all a ranking system there. And I was just thinking, it could also impact accountability, because Metro North now has 3rd grade, which is a testing grade, but next year they won't have they won't have a grade.
They always go with the school grade above them.
Grade above them. So
whatever Sharp Creek's grade is
Metro North
their
inherits.
grade,
Yeah.
I believe.
And interesting to note, this will definitely change, but a week ago, looking just at enrollment, it was exactly the same, that we would look at Metro North next year would have approximately 255 students and Sharp Creek would have 255. Now, that's going to change, and hopefully more in both buildings, but it was just interesting to note because of the preschool classes compared to a smaller, we had that 6th grade class that has 4 sections. They're moving to Northfield, so it's going to be smaller there. And then also we do not have the RISE classroom next year there. So in reality, we're only moving one more section because we're losing the one room for the RISE classroom, and we're losing the 1 6th grade section because there were 4, now there's only 3, and then we're moving up 3. So it's not changing a lot necessarily. So, but it makes more sense that we could allow, well, it makes sense because we would not be able to do the other preschools if we kept 3rd grade there, so.
I move to approve the grade configuration between Metro North and Sharp Creek.
Second.
Right, a motion and second to approve the grade configuration of Metro North and Sharp Creek. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Recommendation to approve an extended day out-of-state field trip for Northfield's AP Physics, Chemistry, and Calculus classes to go to Cedar Point on May 14th, 2021. Just in the nick of time they got to it.
I disapprove.
We We've
already had how many days off? What is this?
We've had those, right, just because of the way the board meetings fall, we've had to actually approve stuff that was already in the past. So just for fun, I've always thought about just saying no to those. But, you know, you work at whatever you get the board meetings to. But anyway, this one works out that we can actually approve before the.
I'll move to approve that.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the Northfield trip to Cedar Point. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
They will appreciate that they're not gonna ask for your phone number too.
There's no unfinished business. Board policy, we'll give a 10-second delay here for public comment on anything.
We do have a question.
Okay.
Aaron Roth asks, do you have any thoughts about making masks optional for students in the 2021-2022 school year?
We have no idea at this time. It's too early to tell. And that's not necessarily MSD of Wabash County. That would be the state of Indiana and executive orders that are given to us.
And that's the one.
Okay.
We would love it.
Items from board members?
Do we have to follow that?
We don't have to.
We could, but,
There's been some boards that
Yeah.
have not.
we told-
Which boards have not followed executive orders? I would think that would be,
In Indiana, I don't know.
Not just in the-
Yeah, I don't see what language is in the executive order before we make any sort of policy. It's contrary to an executive order. Please give me that opportunity.
I have a feeling though, we're gonna have people storming the gates if we say yes to mass. But
I'm from in no position.
Yeah. I hope.
what?
We'll see what our.
it's
budget
way
is.
too early to tell. I don't
It's
know.
too early, it's too early. I get that. Let's finish this year on a positive note and figure out what happens over the summer. So, all right, so no items from board members, we're adjourned.